Argument over. Jermell Charlo stops Brian Castano in their highly anticipated rematch this past Saturday night to become the 7th undisputed champion of this era, the quote-unquote four-belt era. Welcome, everybody, to the Tomatolito Boxing Show. And yes, what a fight, what a rematch we just witnessed just a few days ago. I actually had a chance to be there live in Carson, and what a scene. I mean, it was insane. The turnout was awesome. And if it wasn't enough, if you didn't think it was loud enough in there, just next door to where the fight was happening, just a few feet away, the large soccer stadium was there hosting a LA Galaxy game. And so the place was insane. Dignity Health Sports Park, formerly known as the StubHub Center. Holy crap, man. The scene, was something to witness, to behold in person. And I am beyond happy that I got to be there live, that I got to witness it. And it's over. The argument is over. The discussions are done with. Jermell Charlo stopped Brian Castano, in the 10th. Towards the close of the 10th. And even then he was headed, he was en route for a decision win, hands down. Not many adjustments from Jermell Charlo, except the fact that he stayed engaged from opening to close. Something that was one of the critiques that I pointed out in the preview episode, leading up to this fight, as we broke down his first fight, and in the lead up, trying to break down the path to victory for each of the fighters, leading up to this rematch, this past Saturday. One of the critiques that I had about Jermell is that he checked out somewhere, in the later rounds, in the mid to later rounds. It seemed like he mentally checked out and started cruising, while Brian Castano was starting to bring on the pressure and put on the pressure, and was winning the rounds because of output. And also landing damaging punches on Jermell from time to time, which were scoring highly and were very impressionable to the judges in that first fight. Hence why a lot of people saw that Brian Castano won the fight, because he won a lot of those middle rounds, and a lot of the swing rounds ended up going his way, with the exception of the one judge who saw it 6 points in favor of Jermell Charlo. Obviously, that fight ended up being a draw. Castano he retained his title. Jermell retained his titles, and entered the build-up to what was to be an awesome night of fights. Great undercard, as it was, and an awesome rematch. I mean, it lived up to the hype. Time and again, we see rematches that don't live up to the hype, that are snooze fests, that will put you to sleep, and you're almost like, wow, I can't believe I tuned in to watch this. And we could look back into years past, rematches that just didn't live up to the hype. This one was basically round 13 from where the last fight ended. They picked up the action right away. It took them maybe about 20 to 30 seconds in that first round for them to actually start throwing, where people started getting antsy. The crowd started screaming at them, telling them to throw a punch and blah, blah, blah. But once they got underway, and once they started loosening up, holy crap, what a fight. It was a tactical, strategic chess match that we saw. The critique that I had for Jermell Charlo is that he checked out somewhere along the late middle rounds, leading towards the championship rounds. And then all of a sudden his light bulb went off, and you notice it. If you go back and watch that first fight, you could see, and I don't remember the exact round. I want to say it was the 11th round. It was definitely in the championship rounds, where you see his facial expression after he departs from the corner, realizing that he was potentially down in the fight, or that it was a closer fight than he was actually realizing at that moment. And it woke him up. And all of a sudden, I remember he just started coming after Brian Castano and just started hunting him down like he got his second wind. And I remember thinking, watching that, if this would have been the Jermell Charlo the entire way, he possibly could have stopped Castano, because he shook him late in the fight and with some heavy punches. Yet it ended up turning out the way it did. And thankfully, we got to see the rematch sooner than later, as it often happens. Jermell Charlo was engaged. He did not check out. He was engaged, and he started breaking the fight loose towards the end of the 6th round, the middle to end of 6th round, and then he started walking away with the fight score-wise, in my opinion. I had it 88-83 when it was all said and done, not expecting the TKO. However, we started seeing signs of that at the end of the 9th round when Brian Castano was wobbled and hurt and walked to his corner, and I was starting to think that they were going to stop the fight, that he was not going to answer the bell, and he did, and Charlo picked up where he left off and came away with the first drop, and immediately when Castano answered the count, he stumbled towards the ropes backwards. Charlo closed in on that gap and immediately landed a punch between the gloves, followed by a heavy, if I remember, it was a left hook to the body, which depleted Castano, put him on his knees, and the fight was called off. Jermell Charlo has become the 7th undisputed champion of this 4-belt era and accompanies the likes of Bernard Hopkins, Jermaine Taylor, Terence Crawford, Alexander Usyk, Josh Taylor, Saul Canelo Alvarez, and now Jermell Charlo. He will forever be in the annals of boxing, in the history books, and you could bet that his illustrious career to date is second to none at the moment. Second to none at the moment. This is his second rematch of his professional career. The first, of course, came against Tony Harrison. Tony Harrison, who got the victory, who got the victory over Jermell Charlo, and the only blemish on Jermell's record to date, by way of a decision victory. It was a close fight. Jermell comes back and stops Tony Harrison in the rematch, which happened in the 11th round. If you look at his last handful of fights, which were supposed to be the fights that were gonna define Jermell Charlo, the fights that were the toughest tests for Jermell Charlo, that were potentially gonna be the wrench on the road for Jermell Charlo, dating back to John Jackson, heavy-handed John Jackson, knockout, 8th round, Jermell wins. Charles Hatley, knockout, round 6. Erickson Lubin, knockout, 1st round. Hammer hands Erickson Lubin, right? Everybody's scared of his power. Enter Jermell Charlo, knockout, 1st round. Austin Trout, veteran Austin Trout, ended up being a majority decision. Lost the unanimous decision to Tony Harrison. Debatable. Jorge Cota, knockout, round 3. Rematch with Tony Harrison, knockout, round 11. Jason Rosario, knockout, round 8. The elusive fighter, Jason Rosario, who was supposed to pose problems for him with the speed, with his hand speed and his combinations. Jermell handled them fairly well. Easy at that, if you go back and watch that fight. Rosario had some success, but Charlo was just too heavy-handed, too hungry that night. Castano won. Draw. Castano, Charlo, 2, knockout at the close of the 10th. Impressive. 35-1-1. The 1 blemish to Tony Harrison by decision. The 1 draw to Brian Carlos Castano. He has done right on both of those stints on his record. Sits with 19 knockouts now and is your undisputed champion at 154 pounds. Impressive, to say the least. Charlo came out with a strategy of, besides not checking out, he was very engaged. He got on his bicycle, but was not sticking and moving. He was sticking and following through. which was a huge, confusing strategy for Castano to be able to figure out, because Castano continued to rush forward on the reset. Charlo would end up moving around, hitting him, connecting successfully, finding himself along the ropes. Castano would try to capitalize on that gap, on that spacing, trying to have, and very good reads, by the way, of Castano, very good reads to try to corner and pressure Charlo when his back was against the ropes. Charlo would duck, would come back up and catch him with an overhand right, or catch him with an awkward uppercut that he was throwing, just throwing punches from all kinds of different angles, mixed his attack very, very well. And I was beyond impressed, as was everybody else that witnessed this. It was a masterful performance. It was a boxing lesson that he gave Brian Carlos Castano. And this is not to diminish Castano, his boxing, his acumen. He stayed forward. Charlo didn't adjust many aspects of his game from fight 1 to fight 2. The biggest thing that I noticed was that he was fully engaged from every single second, from the opening bell, every single second and throughout the rounds, even though he was getting hurt. And to me, one of the discussions that I was having with people that were sitting by me in the stands was that I felt that Charlo was in control the entire fight. And of course, the Argentinian fans were arguing with me because they said that Castano was winning several rounds. I agree with them. I had it 88-83. There were rounds that I gave for Castano because of the pressure, because of the onslaught, because he did manage to steal some rounds with heavier punches to close the rounds. Nonetheless, to me, Charlo seemed like he controlled the entire fight from beginning to end. The stints being when Castano would turn it on and chase after Charlo and find success. However, it was infrequent, and Charlo would get back on his plan and continue applying his strategy and his plan successfully and with ease. He would bounce back. He would get hit right in the mouth. He would get hit right in the nose. He would smile at Castano, get back on his bike, and continue with his jab and get back to his plan. His communication with Derek James was on point, and that ended up throwing off Castano. Castano's plan from the first fight, he also didn't need to change much. In my opinion, he didn't need to change much. He just needed to stick to what gave him the victory, per se, because it was a debatable draw, including in my eyes, right, where I gave it 115-113 for Castano in the first fight. I understood the draw. There were a lot of swing rounds, and the 114-114 score I was not against. The 115-113 meant that it was a matter of one round that ended up going Castano's way versus Charlo's way, because if I would have given it to Charlo, any one of those swing rounds that I ended up giving to Castano, we would have had a draw as well. And I would have agreed with that. So I wasn't angry with the draw. It was that 6-point gap, this decision or scoring that one of those judges had. This one started the same way. Round 1, round 2, round 3, round 4, just tight as could be. By the close of round 4, that place just blew up. I don't know how it came across on the television, but live, everybody jumped on their feet. And I mean everybody. It was like an explosion. There was loud, and everybody was clapping and applauding, and nobody sat down. They gave them a standing ovation, and we stood the entire minute break until the 5th round started. That's how that's the type of atmosphere that was there in Carson that night. The 5th round, again, they started throwing some mean punches with bad intentions and started landing and connecting, and the crowd was going back and forth. Both the fan base for Castano and the fan base for Charlo. It was awesome. By the 6th round, it started going Charlo's way. He started gaining control, and that's how the scoring came about. I'll read you the scorecards. Let me pull it up here real quick, and I'll tell you exactly how I saw it. All right, so here we go. So I had round 1 and round 2 for Jermell, round 3 for Castano, Round 4 for Jermell. Round 5 for Castano. Round 6, 7, 8, and 9 for Charlo. And round 10, he was headed. He was dominating, and obviously he got the stop. Castano was in those later rounds from round 8 to the close of the fight. He was starting to get careless because he was hurt. He was a bit wobbled. He was a bit hurt. And he started fighting with urgency. And that urgency led him to keep his hands a little bit wider than normal, expose the chin a little bit more, and Charlo capitalized. 1, 2, credit to Charlo that he was throwing punches from every angle, and those uppercuts were coming from weird angles. He was even throwing lunging uppercuts. He was lunging forward with an uppercut, and one of them missed, and it was so clear that it missed, and if that thing would have landed, it would have sent Castano's head to the stands. Charlo mixed up his attack so good, so efficient, so accurate, and it was a sight to see. These are two elite level fighters. And for one to be a step ahead of the other one and make it look so obvious that he was a step ahead or a nod ahead over another elite fighter is beyond impressive. Flawless victory, as they would say in Mortal Kombat. Flawless victory for Jermell Charlo. What a way to close the show. If you're going to shut all the doubters up, that's the way to do it. Close the show. Congratulations, Jermell Charlo. Your 7th undisputed champion of this era. Sure shot to be in the Hall of Fame with an accomplishment such as this. No dispute there. And we are maybe a matter of weeks away from having an 8th undisputed champion, someone to follow in the footsteps of Charlo in the lightweight division. Devin Haney, George Kambosos, all titles on the line, and this will be for the legitimate undisputed title. All titles on the line, including the Ring Magazine title. Devin Haney's bringing the WBC with them. Kambosos has WBA, WBO, IBF, and the Ring Magazine title that he lifted from Teofimo Lopez in his victory last year. And that's going to be for all the marbles. We should have an 8th undisputed champion, unless the random likelihood of another draw, just like Charlo Castano 1, occurs. And the fight's going to be in Australia. If you guys recall years back, Manny Pacquiao and what was that guy's name? I can't remember his name, but it was the Australian fighter at welterweight who later ended up coming to fight Terence Crawford. It'll come back, but anyways, questionable decisions have happened in Australia. I'm looking up the fighter. Let's see. I hate spinning my brain like that and not having an answer for you. Let me bring this up here real quick. Jeff Horn. How was I going to remember that? Come on. Jeff Horn. That was in 2017. Manny Pacquiao, Jeff Horn. And that was a fight that I thought Manny Pacquiao ended up winning. Some people actually had Jeff Horn winning. I thought it was as big a robbery job as we've ever seen in boxing. And it happened to the legend, Manny Pacquiao. So that was that. Manny Pacquiao lost his WBO title on that occasion. And then Jeff Horn ends up getting bested by one Terence Crawford, who has yet to relinquish that title to date. What an amazing fight. On the undercard, Jaron Boots Ennis dismantled Canadian star Cusio Clayton, who was undefeated. Again, supposed to be a big test for Jaron Ennis, and he just dropped the bomb on Clayton and basically glued him to the floor. Clayton couldn't get up. that stole the show until the main event started. If the main event would have been a decision victory, by far Jaron Ennis would have had the performance of the night and the knockout of the night. Maybe he walked away with the knockout of the night, but holy crap, I mean, I would have to lean with Charlo just because of the meaningfulness behind his stoppage win over another elite fighter versus Jaron Ennis, who's on the way up, and Custio Clayton, who obviously had no business being in there, even though he had an amazing record. And on paper, it looked like this was going to be a closely or a tight-knit fight, and Ennis just proved that he's a step ahead. And he's calling everybody out. Keith Thurman, Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford. He's calling the big dogs out. He wants the big name, the marquee matchup. And with that knockout win, Jaron Ennis becomes the mandatory for Errol Spence's IBF title. Stanionis beating Butayev on the undercard of Spence Ugas. Stanionis is the mandatory for Errol Spence for a WBA unification, becoming the world champion, Errol Spence holding the super version of that title. And it looks like Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford are in talks. Hopefully that fight doesn't fall through. Hopefully we get to see it by the close of this calendar year. But that's stories for another day. That's the dialogue that Jaron Ennis opened up. And that's where Jaron Ennis is positioning himself, just a division south of Charlo. And the dominance that he has over the 154-pound division. What's next for Charlo? Well, let him rest. Let him enjoy this victory before people quickly jump at calling out who the next person is. He's been going back and forth on social media with Terrence Crawford. Terrence Crawford has said if he doesn't get the fight with Errol Spence, he'll move up to 154 and take on Jermell Charlo and take all his titles from him. And the back and forth, the banter, the back and forth has been going on for quite a bit. Terrence Crawford also has a big payday looming against one Josh Taylor, who's the undisputed champ at 140 pounds and has made claims numerous times that he's willing to move up to face Terrence Crawford at 147. So Terrence is kind of in that position where he has a big payday that he could land, one division north. He has a big payday looming and calling him out, one division south, and he has Errol Spence in his very same division. And that fight, I hope it happens, and I hope no further delays happen, just like the Mayweather-Pacquiao that took years and years and years and years and years to come to fruition. Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence, for all the titles, for all the glory of welterweight division, that would be the match to make. And I have no doubts that it would potentially be something as special as what we just saw with Charlo and Castano, if not more. Jermell Charlo steals the show. Jermell Charlo sits atop the throne of the 154-pound division. He is your 7th undisputed world champion in boxing history as far as the four-belt era is concerned. The sky's the limit, and he says he's not done. He's not reaching the top, the pinnacle, and willing to call it quits. He may very well be our boxing's own Kamaru Usman and start lapping people. Start giving rematches, go after the trilogy with Tony Harrison, and end that argument. If it's not done already, in my eyes, there's nothing there to pursue. But Tony Harrison seems to be coming back with that awesome victory he had over Sergio Garcia. He's trying to climb back up in the ranks, and he's very close to start knocking on that door. Sebastian Fundora, the towering inferno Sebastian Fundora, seems to be where the next matchup may be headed for Jermell Charlo, maybe at the end of this year, maybe early next year. Sebastian Fundora is the potential right now. Australia's own Tim Tszyu, son of legend Costa Tszyu. He seems to be another one who may be in line to face Charlo. I see Fundora happening before Tim Tszyu. That's it. Other than that, I don't really see many other names. There's other fighters that need to continue climbing up the ranks. And maybe they're a couple fights away from knocking on that door. But those are the only 2 fights that I would see for Jermell Charlo, which should carry us well into a year from now. If he has one more showing this year and takes on Fundora or Tszyu, next year he could take on the other, and that should get him into an even bigger payday. Say Terrence Crawford does come up north, or somebody from the 160 drops down to challenge him, or he decides to just vacate and move up with his brother at 160. That would be a potential, just because Jermell is in talks and trying to land a big marquee fight, either at 160 or potentially willing to move up to 168, as there's been words and exchanges between him and David Benavidez, Demetrius Andrade, and of course chasing the fight with Canelo Alvarez. Now that Canelo Alvarez lost to Dimitri Bivol, it's more than likely that he's going to be coming down to 168 and facing David Benavidez. If he doesn't pursue that trilogy with Triple G come September, he may very well be in a big Mexican showdown in September against one David Benavidez, who is in action this coming week against David Lemieux for the WBC interim, which will give him the mandatory to Canelo's WBC strap at 168. Impressive the way that the boxing landscape is playing out, and really exciting for us fans. With that said, I'll leave you with that. Impressive that Jermell Charlo has become the undisputed champion, your newest undisputed champion. On the women's side of things, we have Cecilia Braekhus, who was the original undisputed champ in the 4-belt era. Cecilia Braekhus, who held that undisputed reign for almost 6 years, I believe, I think it was 6 years, as a matter of fact. The list for women's boxing undisputed champs are Cecilia Braekhus, Claressa Shields, Katie Taylor, Jessica McCaskill, Claressa Shields, and your newest undisputed champ happened on the undercard of Taylor Serrano a few weeks ago, and that being Franchon Cruz Dezern. Braekhus, Shields, Taylor, McCaskill, Shields, one at middleweight, one at junior middleweight. Dezern, one less in women's boxing. They're at 6, men are at 7. Pretty cool era that we're living in, and it looks like it's not slowing down anytime soon. I'll leave you guys with that. Thank you guys so much. Don't forget to download the episodes, leave me a rating, leave me some comments, and if you like the content, continue to spread the word. You guys have been doing awesome. The show continues to grow, and it definitely spiked quite a bit in the last couple weeks since the Shakur Valdez fight, since the Serrano Taylor fight, the Canelo. It's been spiking quite a bit, and I owe it all the little bit of success and the drive that I have to sit here in front of the microphone is all because of you guys and gals. I owe it to you guys. This is not about clout chasing. This is not about headline grabbing. This is just trying to keep and bring a purity in the dialogue that exists today, and trying to call these as even keel as possible. Not trying to critique anybody, not focusing on the negatives, but rather focusing on the many positives that we have in today's boxing and the awesome era that we're experiencing and we're getting to witness. So I owe every bit of success to you guys. Thank you guys again. I'll catch you guys on the next few episodes, and many more amazing fights to come as we reach the midway point of 2022. Have a great night. Talk to you all soon. Take care.